Welcome, my darlings, to another vlog. Such a dark subject today. My fears. I mean, every human being has fears, no? So talking about them is very, very scary. But before we get in all that, I want you to notice this. These. You observe something different? These are not black, these are white. One of my subscribers left me a message and says that the gloves must be white, not black. Let me say first that this costume didn't arrive with the gloves. The gloves, I had it on my house for other purposes. So the costume is just this, and the robe. These I added myself. Why someone would have such gloves in the house? If you are wondering, these are for the opera. I love going to opera. Last time I was to the opera was years ago, like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. But when you are going to the opera, you have to dress up very elegantly, to have a hat and also the gloves. So I decided to wear them. If the white gloves makes you happy, I am going to wear it. Now, getting back to today's subject, what are my worst fears in life and why I decided to make such a videos around Christmas time about our fears? Because Christmas, it's not only a time of joy, but it's also a time of sadness. I don't know why our mind works like this, but on holidays, for humans that are alone or unhappy, it's the worst time to cope. In the middle of the year, when everybody goes on about their business, it's easier to cope with your own misfortune. But in the holiday times, when everybody is happy and everybody is surrounded by the family, it's very hard to cope if you are not surrounded by love or your own family or the people you want to be with. In that period, you are starting to think about your own misfortune or your own unhappiness and also of your own fears, because isn't it, the fears, the sentiment of fears is triggered when you are upset, when you are tired, and when you are not yourself. Then you cannot control yourself, because the most of the time we are in control of our fears. But when we are upset or unbalanced, we cannot get hold of those fears, and the fears overcomes us. At least this is my case, and I think there are a lot of people who are going to recognize themselves in that description. And this is why I want to talk about the fears and the negative, not negative part, the things that are happen to us in the holidays period, because it's not all fun and joy and happiness and I don't know, Christmas tree and lights. Not for all of us. There are people out there who are unhappy, or they are passing through the worst time of their lives, or maybe an unhappy time of their lives, and we have to address this and we have to recognize this, and I want to help you get through that. I know the most psychologists tells us that the best way to get rid of a fear is to confront it, but I'm telling you that this is not working with all the fears. This has worked in my experience with some of the fears, but not all of the fears. So I'm going to give you an example of the fears that I can manage by confronting them. And I want to give you an example of the fears that I can manage but staying away from that fear. One of the greatest, if not my greatest fear in life is the fear of death. Why? I don't know. I was always that kind of person, searching and finding and seeing the positive in life. So the positive didn't come easy to me. It wasn't always rainbows and sunshines, and I have always been a lucky person, but I have always been struggling with seeing and recognizing the fact that I'm a happy person. So I was always aware of the fact that life is a precious gift. I've always been that kind of person who naturally fights fights everything, fights the environment, fights for another day. And I've always liked that quote that Scarlett O'Hara told, tomorrow is another day, because in my life it is truly demonstrated that tomorrow is another day and tomorrow it will be better. So that this is something that comes naturally to me. In the midst of all of this, I have always treasured life, and I don't want to lose it. Well, no matter what, if I'm poor or rich or in a relationship or maybe unloved or feeling lonely or surrounded by people who love me, my life is the precious asset I have. So my greatest fear is that I'm not living the life to the fullest I can live. This is where I have this passion of doing things better or doing things faster and farther than anyone else, because I realize that I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time for everything that I want to do. The second most greatest fear I have is the fear of cars, of getting in the car and having an accident and die. And this, of course, it relates to the first one, but I actually have to take pills, actual medicine, before getting in a car. And this is something that really disrupts my life, because I really like travel, but as you know, the airports are not really in the city, and I have to get on a car with a stranger in a taxi to get me to from my house to an airport. And I actually take a pill before going on that trip. I realize this is a problem, and this is something that I have to control. But comparing this to the fear of dying, the fear of dying was very great like 5 years ago. It was something that I cannot control, and I could not control until I confronted that fear. And maybe it's the age, and maybe it's the wisdom, and maybe it's the books, and maybe it's the acceptance that everybody dies. I don't know what it is, but I feel that I came to terms with my own mortality. I come to accept the fact that I'm going to die someday, maybe someday soon, we don't know. So this I achieved by directly confronting this, talking to people about this, reading books about it, and thinking about it. Fear of cars, I also get rid of it in a very strange way. I mean, in Romania, I live in the central Bucharest, in a very center of the city, and everything I need is in a walking distance. My office is in a walking distance, the shops are in a walking distance, my favorite places are in the walking distance, so I almost never get in a car. So I design my life around my fears. I don't know if it's wise, but it is manageable. So this is also one of the fears I keep under control by confronting them. How I confront this fear? Like I said, in Bucharest, I am afraid to drive, and I'm also afraid to be in the car with someone who drives. But in Portugal, I go to Portugal 3 years ago, and I discovered something wonderful that you have in Portugal. You have roundabouts. You know, roundabouts. And those roundabouts minimize the chance of getting into an accident. Why? Because every 2 kilometers you have to stop the car to get into a roundabout, or you have to slow the car to get into a roundabout. In Romania, we don't have that. We have to constantly get to the lane that comes from the other side in order to get past a car or a motorcycle or something like that who goes too slow, and this puts us constantly in the way of an accident. So in Portugal, this is easily avoided by having these roundabouts. I confronted my fear so much so that I can also drive in Portugal. And I have to tell you something about myself to understand. I was the person who drove everything from a sports car, from a middle class car, to a pickup truck, to a large truck, I drove it all, and I drove also with 150 kilometers an hour, 200 kilometers an hour. I risked my life racing on the motorway, so I did it all. So I wasn't always like this. So I took my license when I had 18 years old, and I drove for many years, every day. So I was quite skilled at driving, but somewhere along the way I realized that you can die any moment, and in Romania we have a lot of accidents. I know you Portuguese people think that in Portugal you have a lot of accidents, but you don't. And I know you blame British people about the driving methods and how they drive, but you don't know Romania. You don't know the British people, they are okay. You, in Portugal, you are driving okay. Nothing compares with what we are experiencing in Romania. And in Romania, we don't have highways, we don't have good roads, we have roads with 1 or 2 lanes, and it's very dangerous to drive in Romania. I don't think there is another country in Europe where it's such a dangerous thing to drive. So how I got rid of this? When I'm in Portugal, I keep this fear under control by driving and by also getting a lot in the car, because we have to visit places to film. So the more I get in the car and drive, and let other people drive, especially my partner, which I trust, I get to keep this fear under control. So this is also one of the fears I keep under control by confronting the fear. But one of the fears I cannot confront and I'm better off staying away from, it's fear of the insects. Yes, everything that flies, everything that moves and it's tiny, I have an inexplicable fear of it. I have such a fear that I can't even talk about it. This is something that I best not to talk about it, and just let you know that this is something irrational, fears of insects, and I best not confront it and best not to talk about it, and something that I cannot master at this time in my life. Another fear that I had, but I don't have anymore because I overcame it, it was the fear of being alone. And I don't know if I actually overcome this fear or just I don't feel it because now I'm in a relationship. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. But before I was in this relationship, I was constantly fearing being alone. Before ending my last relationship 10 years ago, I had a period of time, like, I don't know, 6 months or a year. It was a fairly long period of time for me in which I didn't have a steady relationship. I was kind of alone and I had to fend for myself, and everything I did alone. And that period taught me how to be alone. And it's some truth and a lot of truth in the saying that in order to get into a better relationship and have a better relationship, you have to learn first to deal with yourself. You have to learn to be alone. I didn't plan to learn to be alone, but I learned it anyway. So that, even if I regard it as a not so great period in my life, it was a great period because I learned a lot. I learned how to fend for myself, and now if I, God forbid, remain alone, I know that I can do it. So it's very important to experience some things in order to know that you are able to do it and how it feels. So when you know how things feel, it's not such a scary thing anymore. So guys, these are my fears. Please leave it in the comments. What are your fears? What are you battling on? What are you not dealing with? What are your struggles in life? And maybe, just maybe, I will see you tomorrow in my next video. Bye!